And it was freezing, it was Christmas, and I remember having some drinks with the guys there. And it's kind of weird to be overseas during that period, but I feel like it was very common around that time. We just expected to be away a lot of the year. It was an unusual way to live, and we did it for years.
Welcome to the podcast where we track down Australian war veterans, have a chat with them, and hear their stories. I'm Alex Lloyd, and this is Life on the Line.
The single greatest sacrifice I've made is my family.
We weren't out there to take country, we were out there to do something. That was our job.
I did feel a lot of regret.
Friends were still getting killed.
It got to the point where, you're going to funerals quite often.
Do I lead under fire?
And that was a heavy responsibility, I guess, on my shoulders that I didn't want to screw up.
War itself is horrific. It's a horror story. It should never be dressed up as if it's something glorious.
Not what you can do for yourself, but what can you do for your country.
The volunteer for service was in effect to put your life on the line.
I'm Thomas Kaye, and you're listening to Life on the Line. This episode is our annual holiday season special, with veterans from Season 5 sharing their stories of a Christmas in uniform. These are stories from lower ranks to junior officers to the Chief of the Defence Force. Some of these stories are heartwarming celebrations abroad, some were difficult days away from home. Yet all of these men did their duty on a time that for most of us is a holiday. This is Christmas on the Line. Former SAS officer Mark Wales returned to the show this year to promote his memoir, Survivor: Life in the SAS. He shared a new Christmas story with Alex Lloyd.
Did you ever have a Christmas in uniform on deployment or some kind of at-home SAS or Army-themed shenanigans?
We actually did. I think I remember being in, Tarankout. We were re-raising a capability in Tarankout in 2009, I think it was. And it was freezing, it was Christmas, and I remember having some drinks with the guys there, and we were training. We had an interpreter with us and a few others. And I had to change the details of this in the book because the missions we were doing at that point were slightly different to the combat missions. These were more centered around intelligence collection. It's kind of weird to be overseas during that period, but I feel like it was very common around that time. We just expected to be away a lot of the year. It was an unusual way to live, and we did it for years.
Well, as you write in Survivor: Life in the SAS, that you get to this point psychologically that Afghanistan is home and Australia is a place you come home, do your bills, take care of that stuff, and you're not really feeling at ease there. And you mentioned to me in our original podcast, it feels like this facade of this civilization we live in isn't real. And so I can imagine you've been over there in the Middle East, kind of appropriate for Christmas, actually. Just a normal holiday like that takes on a whole different meaning.
Yeah, it felt like we were consequential in Afghanistan, and when we came home, we were not anymore. And it was very unusual. I remember coming home and thinking, we've managed to build this society where we're now completely safe and very prosperous, and it's all very kind of punishing. It was kind of odd. I think we all yearned to go back and find that meaning and purpose, and that we mattered to our mates. And yeah, it just became that way after going there so long.
Royal Australian Navy veteran Wayne Bemet remembers being away from loved ones while deployed to the Arabian Gulf. He told his Christmas story to Angus Horden.
So, Wayne, did you end up spending any of your Christmases abroad?
I did, Angus. I was lucky enough just to do the one. That was in 2008 when I was living on Kaye in the North Arabian Gulf. So I find myself pretty lucky that over 19 and a bit years I was only away for one Christmas. But that was certainly a unique experience.
And what was the food like?
A lot of curry. We were working Christmas Day and all the rest of it. We got to Zoom home, and my wife and that were at family, which was great. But I was, it was in kind of winter time in the North Arabian Gulf, so I had my beanie on and a few other things, and I was ready to go and watch. And a little bit depressing, but it's one of those experiences that, I find myself quite lucky that was only just the once.
So in Nelson's day, they used to have a rum ration. Did you have a drink or?
I think they had it available, but I just couldn't be bothered. I didn't really want to celebrate Christmas at all. I was a little bit of a Grinch, to be honest, because I was so focused on what I was doing, and I wanted to save sort of any celebrations I had when I came home. So fortunately enough, we were home about a month later.
2nd Commando Regiment veteran Wes H Hennessey came back on the podcast this year as a contributor to our special tribute episode, number 107, Brett Wood. While catching up with Alex, H also shared a Christmas story from one of his many deployments to Afghanistan.
H, did you ever have a Christmas in Afghanistan?
Actually, I did. I was fortunate enough to, one, be in Kabul, and two, therefore have a white Christmas. So that was December 2013. It was quite unique. One, I was in Kabul, so I hadn't experienced a white Christmas before, even though, not actual Christmas Day. I'd had several flights to the US over there over our summer, over the Christmas period, but not for Christmas Day. And I'd always wanted a white Christmas. So for me, and we got a reasonable snowfall in Kabul that year. So just the snow alone, even though I was in Afghanistan and I was in Kabul, it was quite unique. And I remember, to be honest with you, looking out across the mountains at all opportunities I could to be, quite picturesque. And it was good. Driving was extremely hazardous. At the time, I was a senior enlisted advisor to the Special Operations Advisory Group. And we happened to have our little headquarter element next to ISAF headquarters actual. So what that meant was the messing arrangements and other things were quite diverse and multicultural. And I do remember that, on Christmas morning, walking into the mess, because there was components of, a multitude of countries' Christmas elements, and me being a fond eater, I found that, it was just quite, to be honest, it was quite, for that area, it was a nice day. But like I said, quite unique in the fact that I was able to experience so many different nationalities' foods, because there were all nationalities who were in Afghanistan were particularly represented heavily at the ISAF headquarters. And the fact that, as I've already said, that it was a white Christmas.
You mentioned there that it was a nice day, and previously we've talked about quite a few hairy days you've had in Afghanistan. So that must have been quite a nice change of pace for you to put the feet up, so to speak.
You're exactly right. And to be honest, I remember it, ironically, to being an enjoyable day. I think I had to go out once. And what I mean by that is, we had to tool up and go across to where the fighting element that we were supporting was, one of the Afghanistan Special Operations Task Forces. And even I remember the drive over, because it had snowed, within the last few nights, or even that night beforehand. I can remember the drive over was, the driving there is, quite hazardous normally, but this was even more so with the recent snowfall. And, there's people who, are driving around who basically haven't driven in snow before, mainly coalition forces. But yeah, we went out, we got a few things done that day, nothing spectacular, which is, I was quite more than happy with. And then came back, and I remember we just sat around, we had a few drinks, shared with some coalition partners I was with, some of the New Zealanders, some of the Norwegian guys, the Americans and the Brits, who were all components within the small organisation I was working with at that time. And we just shared some, different Christmas stories, different Christmas foods that were specific or unique, to those nationalities. And like I said, Matt, I actually remember it to be one of my better Christmases. I probably had a better Christmas there than I've certainly had on a couple of occasions back here in Australia.
Another contributor to the Brentwood episode was former Commando Jamie. Jamie shared his Christmas memory with the late Sergeant Brett Wood, MG DSM.
Jamie, do you remember a Christmas in Malaysia with you and the late Sergeant Brett Wood?
I do. It's called Rifle Company Butterworth, where we send over an infantry unit to serve and be stationed in Butterworth, Malaysia. There's a city, Penang, a good place to go for young men, and we were influenced by our seniors to go in there and have some fun and enjoy ourselves. And a platoon sergeant took us young guys into town, and we were privy to some of the cooking styles in the back alleys of Penang, and I distinctly remember being offered to drink the hot curry sauce from someone's little hole-in-the-wall restaurant, and Brett and I and a few others were just sitting there just sort of laughing and watching this sergeant drink this hot curry, which did taste good, but very hot, and early hours of the morning and then trying to get home.
Rear Admiral Chris Oxenbould was the commander of the Royal Australian Navy Task Group during the First Gulf War. He had a busy Christmas day.
So around this time, you would have had a Christmas at sea, I imagine.
Yes, we did, which was in the lead up to that countdown. It was a very tense period, and in fact, the interception forces were still ongoing. There was a particular ship, the Ibn Khaldun, which was heading into the Persian Gulf, and it was a protest ship which had a lot of women on board and students, and to try and attract media attention and make it difficult for the ship to be boarded. The Ibn Khaldun, it was being monitored very closely as it was approaching the Gulf area. The Americans who were in charge of the interception forces, they wanted to have a multinational force of several nations involved in the boarding because it had the potential to be quite newsworthy and media-worthy, and that's what the Iraqis were trying to achieve. And so Sydney was assigned to that boarding. I was in the Brisbane, flew by helicopter down to join the Sydney, and we steamed out of the Gulf into the Gulf of Oman, just outside the Straits of Hormuz, and took part in the boarding of the Ibn Khaldun. And that was over Christmas. That was on Christmas Day that the boarding of Ibn, I'm pretty sure it was Christmas Day, or if not, we did the final rehearsal with the American forces, the American Marines, the SEALs, and the ships that they had involved with it.
A different Christmas Day spent at sea.
A very different day spent at sea. And even the lead up to that, because when I was in Brisbane was spending some time alongside in Bahrain. Tim Fisher, I think he may have just been a Member of Parliament at that stage, but he was a Member of Parliament, and because of his Vietnam experience, he was convinced that if Australian forces were deployed overseas at Christmas time, a Member of Parliament should come and join them. And we were told that Tim Fisher was going to join us, and we weren't very appreciative of that at the time because it was a tense period and we were doing a lot of preparation to get ourselves ready to the countdown of the 16th of January. However, he came and he was marvellous. Brought across a few magazines for the sailors to read on the mess decks and stuff like that.
Greg Hopgood is an Australian Army veteran who deployed to Somalia during the humanitarian crisis. His Christmas story took place in Australia just before heading overseas.
Then they came back to Malang, but that year in 92, I couldn't believe, when I saw the news and that, I couldn't tell you where Somalia was on the map. I didn't even know it was in Africa or Europe or anywhere. Wouldn't have a clue. I just saw it on the news first, and then I got a phone call from my parents because every time, because we're on obviously Christmas leave for 6 weeks, I get a phone call when I was with my ex-wife at that time at Bribie Island because there was no mobile phones. So she rings up at Bribie Island, the house I was there, because I was making my way down, driving down for Christmas to see Mum and Dad. But they said, you have to turn around, you're getting deployed to Somalia. I said, what? Couldn't believe it. Like, I haven't heard anything about this. So I just ended up watching that news that night. It was all over the news. And so obviously I rang the army back, 1RAR, and they said, just have Christmas off and we'll fly you back. We'll fly you back Christmas. Yeah, it was Christmas Day. We got recalled back. I think Alpha Company, they were the advance party. They actually left on Christmas Day. The rest of the battalion had 2 weeks of pre-deployment training. But it was funny that time when I got that call when I was reading in the army, because in 1992, a 100-year flood had hit Leon Creek when I was on the phone to the people at Keswick Barracks in Adelaide, because they were organising a plane flight to get me back. I said, look, the phone's going to cut out any second now, because I remember looking at the water flowing through the door of the house, because the SES and the CFS, they couldn't stop the water coming in the house. All the sandbags and all that just blew, just fell over with the pressure of the water, and then it started coming into the house. And then all of a sudden, the phone went out. The water went over the landline, and that was it. So they thought I was making an excuse not to go. They thought, no, stop making excuses. I'm not making. I said, I'm not making any excuses. I actually ended up having to make the phone call at a phone box. That time I had to leave straight away. So, but yeah, they had the plane ticket was ready. The car that I came down in, we lost in the floods. And yeah, so when I went back up to Townsville, I had a story to tell, but I never told anyone because there was much more exciting stuff going on, like my pre-deployment training. So I put that behind me, you know.
So you spend Christmas Day, you get to have it at home, but it's flooded and you kind of got the upcoming deployment on your mind. So I imagine it wasn't a very relaxed, happy day. It was more...
No, I was stressed. The water came down that quick through Leon Creek. Like I said, it was 1 in a 100-year flood, and we had to get the SES, and we were rescued out by boat, and some were helicoptered next door. They had to be helicoptered off the roof. That was at Bremerton Lodge there in Leon Creek, and they were chopping off the roof because the second wave of water that came down was unbelievable. It just, like, the water went up, left about probably a half a metre from the ceiling. That's how deep the water got. Then the SES, they came with the Zodiacs and that, and yeah, they took me and my brothers, and the family out, obviously with the dog, the pet dog and all that at the time. We had a shepherd and that. So, then they had to put us to higher ground. So they just dumped on the highest ground and then they were back into rescuing more people. That was Christmas, on Christmas Day.
Keith Wolahan, a veteran of the 1st Commando Regiment, remembers vividly his Christmas in Afghanistan.
Did you actually ever, over your military career, be away from home at Christmas time?
I was. When I was a platoon commander, we were all there for Christmas and New Year's. And again, that was a very special thing to be with your friends in that environment. And I think back now to those who were fathers and mothers, people in other roles. We all decided if we didn't have kids, we'd free up the internet that was there, which then was only certain computers were set aside. So people who had kids, we wanted them to be able to talk to their kids at Christmas. A very special Christmas. We'd just come off a mission, had Christmas, and then 2 days later we were back out again, and we had New Year's up in Northern Oregon, so we had that in the field.
In our last video podcast of Season 5, Angus Horden interviewed General Sir Peter Cosgrove. Sir Peter had a rather light-hearted Christmas story to share from when he was Chief of the Defence Force.
Out of interest, you would have spent many Christmases abroad. Do you have any memorable times that you were there?
Yes, Baghdad, in the Hussein's, one of his many palaces, but there was one which was became Camp Freedom or something like that, but it was one of Saddam's palaces. I was there for Christmas Day with the troops, and we gathered them in. We had the people we had salted away around the major Yank headquarters, and we got people from the embassy guard and those sort of folks. So we had a Christmas lunch. The caterers had gone mad and produced hot box lunches. And in the usual way, I was CDF at this stage, the usual way, the senior people put themselves on the food servery and they're the last to get fed. So all the other ranks file past. So you had the 4-star and a 3-star and a bunch of officers serving the food. So I'm looking around, I thought, now every soldier coming past, every sailor, soldier, airman or woman coming past, it's going to want to get served by the CDF. And what have we got here that the diggers won't be inclined to have? And it was broccoli. This is Christmas lunch. So big tray of broccoli. And I knew the chefs would be sad if nobody ate the broccoli. So as CDF, you get to choose. I could have chosen the roast beef or something, but I said, I'll go on the broccoli. So I get on the broccoli. And every person coming past with all the luscious stuff on their plate would come to the CDF, and I'm here with my tongs, and they got the broccoli. And I said, your mother's been in touch and she insists you have broccoli. And I put some on their plate. I was so pleased nobody said, oh, my mum died last week. But they all took broccoli. And the only thing is, I'm told later on by my ADC, a lot of broccoli got scraped off in the bin. So and the other thing I remember about that Christmas is that Santa came in. Now, Santa was wearing disruptive pattern camouflage uniform, desert pattern. He had a red Santa hat on, a false beard, and a shoulder holster. So Santa was armed to the teeth. He had a sack. He gave me whatever he gave me. He gave me a little key ring with a Santa on it. And I think he gave my special forces bodyguards sharpening stones for their daggers. I'm not sure.
That was Christmas on the Line Volume 4, 2021. Be sure to listen to the individual episodes from earlier this year. All details are in the episode description and on our website. In 2018, Season 2, Alex Lloyd hosted the first of these specials, Christmas on the Line.
It was freezing cold, it was snowing, and we were in a bunker. So it was had all those ingredients of Christmas.
In 2019, Season 3, Sharon Maskell-Dare hosted Christmas on the Line Volume 2.
But it's a one of a kind. You can't replicate that here. For as bad as it sounds, I do enjoy a little bit of Christmas here, but I enjoyed the Christmas over there more because it was different. You can't do that anywhere else.
And in 2020, Season 4, Angus Horden hosted Christmas on the Line Volume 3.
Lots of people walking around in combat gear, all camouflaged and booted and spurred for a fight with a red Santa Claus hat on.
You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube at Life on the Line Podcast, on Twitter at LOTL Pod, and on LinkedIn at Thistle Productions. Our website is www.lifeontheline.com. lifeonthelinepodcast.com. And if you like this episode, please consider sharing the podcast on social media or rating us 5 stars in Apple Podcasts. Life on the Line is brought to you by Thistle Productions. Artwork by Big Cat Design, music by Dan Van Werkhoven. I'm Thomas Kaye, on behalf of the team, wishing you all a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Thank you for listening.